In the late 15th century of Europe, we have the beginning of what's called the Age of Discovery, where Europeans start to sail and explore all over the world. And we want to see a few reasons for their interest in exploring. One was a key interest in Asia. Remember that Europe's kind of always traded with Asia, going back to the Silk Road trade and even earlier. Um, but you have an especially kind of renewed interest in the late 14th and 15th century. Remember that Marco Polo, who was an Italian merchant, had traveled in the 13th century to the court of Kublai Khan, or at least he claimed he did. But in any case, his record of his journeys made people really interested in kind of what was out there in the East. You also had legends going back to the Middle Ages of kind of what was out there. Remember that Europeans, although they traded with people in Asia, it wasn't direct. They're trading through intermediaries in the Near East, like Turkey or Arabia. So there's sort of this curiosity of what's out there. There are legends going back to the Middle Ages of this Christian king called Prester John, who had this huge army and ruled sort of as a legendary king. And as late as the 15th century, you had Spanish and Portuguese kings trying to figure out, well, can we convince Prester John to send us soldiers or to help us in the Crusades? He doesn't exist. He didn't exist. But there's this idea that there's a lot of things out there that we don't know about. Maybe we should find out what's going on over there. Some of that interest too was religious. Like we said, you have legends of guys like Prester John, but also keep in mind this is during and right after the Reformation. And so you have groups like the Jesuits who have a keen interest in trying to convert people. And they want to go find non-Christians out there. And they did. You had missionaries like Matteo Ricci in China, later ones in Japan like Francis Xavier, who were out there trying to convert people. And you also had competition religiously in the Mediterranean. The two most powerful empires in the Mediterranean at this time are the Spanish Empire and the Ottoman Empire. And they'll often clash over control of especially the eastern part of the Mediterranean. Some of this exploration is for military interest in trying to gain control of the seas, but that's connected very directly to this religious interest. The Spanish monarchs wanted a Catholic empire, and they saw the Muslim Ottoman Empire as their rivals. Another way in which the Ottomans were rivals was in their control of trade. One of the key trade goods of the 15th century was spices. We're talking things like cinnamon, nutmeg, pepper, things that today we think of as pretty commonplace, but only really grew in Southeast Asia or South Asia. And so if you were in, say, France and you wanted to buy some, we would probably buy some from an Italian merchant. That Italian merchant had probably got it from a Byzantine merchant, although remember, after 1453, there's no Byzantine Empire. It's under the Ottomans. So they might have traded with the Ottomans, who traded with the Arabs, who traded with somebody in Persia, who traded with Indian merchants, all the way back to Southeast Asia. And each middleman that these spices go through, the more expensive they become. And so there was an interest, especially in Spain and Portugal, to see who had kind of the strongest navies at the time, to find a direct way to trade with Asia. If they could cut out all these middlemen and get a way to go straight from Europe to Southeast Asia or East Asia, they might be able to secure these trade routes and make a lot of money that way. And it would cut out the Ottoman Empire. You had a shift too in the economic idea of monarchy in Europe. Remember, this is during the Commercial Revolution; it's still going on, and part of that Commercial Revolution is the idea that trade is the most important thing. One of those key ideas was the development of an economic and political system called mercantilism. We'll talk a lot more about mercantilism next unit because it's key in the growth of colonization in the New World. But some of the key is basically the key idea is money is power. The more money, gold and silver, that a country has, the more power it has. So kings want to grow their country's treasury. They want a favorable balance of trade where they're selling more than they're buying. and they want to build colonies that produce those goods. And so monarchs will have a pretty keen interest in trying to get more control of foreign goods. They don't have to buy them from other people. You can kind of sum up these motivations in three words: God, gold, and glory. They have religious zeal. They want to spread their religion. They want wealth, and they want to glorify themselves and their countries. That's why people started exploring in Europe, or out of Europe, in the 15th